These are the stories we share around the dinner table, tell in front of the campfire, and listen to on our porch. This is a place where tales are told and stories are heard. Grab your tea, your cocoa, your whiskey, your wine. Welcome to the Storyteller's Porch with your host, Jill Davis.
Welcome to the Storyteller's Porch. We are so glad you're here with us today on our virtual porch still. We are here in Colorado Springs, and my guest today is Vivian Cobb. Vivian is a realtor, an inspirational speaker, a mom of 3, 2 boys and 1 girl. And in addition to that, she lives here with me in our beautiful Colorado Springs. I met Vivian a few years ago when I was a TEDx speaker coach, and she was too. It allowed us to connect, get to know each other, and I'm excited to hear your story today, Vivian. Welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Jill. I am so thrilled to be here as well.
And as you know, even though we're on a virtual porch, we always share a drink. I'm drinking sweet and spicy green tea today because it's a little warm and I've been out in the garden. But coming to the porch, I wanted something refreshing. What do you have today?
I have one of my favorite afternoon teas, and that is a cup of Earl Grey.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. And Vivian, we're recording in 2021. It's almost like bizarre for me to say 2021 because I feel like we lost a whole year. Last year was just a crazy, crazy year in so many ways, and yet so long and so short all at the same time. And for all of us, 2020 impacted us differently. I know that you got COVID early on during the pandemic. When did you get that?
I got COVID. I was actually one of the first cases in El Paso County. I got it the second week of March, right about 2 days before they shut Colorado Springs down.
That is just amazing. I remember seeing, of course, we use social media, and I remember seeing you on Facebook and that you had it and you were recovering from it. And then it was about that time, all these different memes were popping up of who do you really know? Who really knows someone who got COVID? Remember that?
Yes, I really do.
I bet you do, because you were one of the first. And I'm like, I already know 2 people. And so it was a little crazy. And as you know, I had COVID as well, and it's definitely an interesting virus, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is.
I know that your story today is about COVID and that world, and so I'm just going to sit back on the porch and listen to your story, Vivian.
Great. Yes, I got COVID early on, and I was very sick with it, actually. I ended up being at home for about 8 days with a fever of between 102 and 103. I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't even watch television. Television was even too much for me. And I think that's part of what we've learned since then, is that it really does affect your brain. And I certainly had the long haulers effects of it as well. But after 8 days of laying in bed and just coughing and not being able to move, there really wasn't anything else that I could do except think and reflect a lot about my life. And I was worried that I might have COVID. Of course, back then, we didn't know we had COVID until you were admitted at the hospital. It was the only place you could even be tested for it. So I didn't know what I had, but I knew I was the sickest I'd ever been in my entire life. And I was scared. I had never been down on my back like that for so long. I am a girl who just goes and goes. I'm very busy. I'm very ambitious. I'm very, crazy almost, and not always productive. Just go, and go from this appointment to that appointment, and doing real estate and doing speaking. And so to be just absolutely stopped dead in my tracks was a new experience for me, for sure. So on the 8th day, something very interesting happened, which has taken about a year of reflection, really, to understand the significance of what happened. And it certainly took me months to even talk about it, because I was afraid, I guess, of what people would think. But I finally did start talking about it, and I'm really glad I did. But what happened was I was laying there and I just got the most incredible sense of calm and contentment and peace. And I just didn't have a single negative thought in my head. Everything just felt like it was okay and perfect. I was really drawn to that feeling and that love. And it was just, it's indescribable, really. I wish I could describe it. I wish there were words that we have right now for it, but there really aren't. That's the best I can do. And I thought, I could actually just drift away. I could go there. And of course, I started thinking about my children and how I really didn't want to leave them and how devastated they would be. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about having fear of going in that direction. Quite the opposite. I was very drawn to it, but I was able to think clearly enough to say, I really don't think this is the right time. And in that moment, I decided to really fight. And I just had seen all these visuals of the coronavirus with their little spikies on the molecules. And so I visualized, I went into this state of visualization where I sent in an army of little molecules, and I imagined that they had little swords and little shields and little helmets on. And because I had so much going on in my chest, and I sent them down into my chest, and I just sort of visualized this incredible battle of all these little soldier molecules taking out the little spiky coronavirus molecules. And the next morning when I woke up, I couldn't quite wake up, and I knew I was in trouble. I couldn't quite come to. I was going in and out of just this incredible fatigue and sleepiness almost. It was something I was very unfamiliar with, but I knew it wasn't good. And I called my boys. Actually, a girlfriend of mine was trying to talk to me on the phone, and all of a sudden my boys are standing in the bedroom with me, look with wide eyes, saying, "Mom, do you need to go to the hospital?" And I said, I think I do. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I can't stand up. And because laying in bed for 8 days, it is amazing how fast your muscles atrophy. And it was such an effort to even get out of the bed to use the restroom. And they said, "Don't worry, Mom, we'll get you there." And so on either side, flanked on either side of me, they got me downstairs, they got me in the car. And my vision when we got to the hospital was going to be that it was a Saturday morning, and that the lobby was just going to be full of people. And I had no concept of what had happened with the lockdown and all of that, because it happened after I'd gotten sick. And so we walk into the lobby, and there is nobody in there except 3 people. There was a security guard, there was somebody at one desk, and somebody at the other desk. And they brought me a wheelchair right away, and they sat me down, and they looked at my boys and they said, "One of you has to leave right now. You can't come in here." And that shocked all of us. And the boys had to make the decision who stayed by whose cell phone was charged the most. And so my oldest son had to leave. My youngest son had to stay in the lobby. And I had no time to hug them, say goodbye, anything. And it was just heart-wrenching for me. And they wheeled me back to the back, and they took a chest x-ray, and sure enough, I had COVID-induced pneumonia. I was very, very sick, and they admitted me, put me on the isolation floor. And I was by myself for 5 days, except for love their hearts, the nurses that came in, and there was an antechamber to the room, and I could hear them suiting up, and they would wash, and I could just hear them putting their masks and their gowns and everything on before they entered the room. And it was such a strange feeling to only see eyes, and they were all masked up, and they would come in as fast as they could and leave as fast as they could, except for this one nurse who actually sat down and pulled up a chair, sat down with me, and talked to me. And that could have been the only human that I saw, the last human I saw. I mean, it was just such a incredible experience. And it turns out he was my neighbor, as a matter of fact. He lives just down the street. And so we got to visit, and he was telling me all the things he was doing to his house. But anyway, the third or fourth morning, I woke up, and I knew the second I woke up that I was going to be okay. When I woke up, again, very hard to describe, but the room was literally filled with love. It was incredible. I could feel it. It was tangible. And I realized that it was the love from the people who were worried about me and praying for me and sending me good vibrations and thinking about me. And it was like this concentration of love that just lifted me up. And I felt better, and I knew I was going to be better. And since then, like I said, I've reflected on that experience, and it's just made me realize how we are all connected by love. It's just the most incredible thing that I've ever experienced. But yeah, I got better, and I did a little while I was still in the hospital, because I kept hearing the same thing. Oh, people didn't believe that being in the hospital. They tested me, and yes, I was positive. And so I did a little service announcement. And my hair was a mess, and I was in a hospital gown. I'd been laying in bed for 13 days. I just looked horrible. But I did this little video that I put out on Facebook because I wanted people to know that it was real and that it was dangerous, and that it was for me anyway, a very difficult disease to overcome and deal with. It was way beyond the flu. And I'm not sure I've ever had the flu. But anyway, it was quite the experience. Yes. But I got home, and I was on oxygen for a few weeks, and then I got better. It took a long time, a lot of fatigue, a lot of brain stuff that I had to memory stuff, and just weird. But about December, I finally started feeling myself again, and I've been doing great ever since.
It's amazing how COVID impacts everybody so differently, isn't it? I have had friends who were down for 2 or 3 days, and then friends like you who are down for such a long time. And I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad that you came through. It sounds like it was a really, really impactful time.
Absolutely, it was. It's just changed everything in my life. It's made me realize that this is it. This is my life, and I need to live it. And so I have just jumped into all the things that I love. And I'm going to make sure that I stay in that place for the rest of my life. Really, I had a miniature collection that I had packed away for 18 years, and this is a collection I've had since I was a little girl. I've collected all of my life, and man, the minute I got better, I unpacked my collection so I could enjoy it, and it's just changed everything for me.
I have heard that several times of that it changes the, having a life-threatening experience of any type changes the way we see the future. And it's so much easier to say, oh, let's live in the present moment when we haven't had a time where we thought there would be no more present moments. And I think that makes a huge difference for us. And I love the fact I have to just relate with you on this, Vivian, that you're coming out of a life-threatening experience and you're worrying about your hair. Isn't that funny how we are as women? Maybe as men, maybe it's a human condition. I'm not sure. But there you were giving hope and, encouraging people to take care of themselves. I would have never known you were worried about your hair. You looked great. You still do. Is there anything else that you want to share today about that time, Vivian?
Well, it's funny you say talk about my hair because my hair, about 3/4 of my hair actually fell out afterward. I guess when you have a really high fever, your body sheds your hair. So I did. I lost my hair, and again, it was like, what? COVID wasn't enough. I had to lose my hair too. But it's all grown back. It's all good. But the experience was life changing for me, and my perspective has changed. And, you hear all these little memes and quips about, oh, don't sweat the small stuff, but boy, it's true. And that just really hit home for me. And now the small stuff doesn't bother me at all. It's like, doesn't matter. It does not matter at the end of the day. It's all about love. It's all about being kind to each other and supporting each other. And that's the message I got anyway, when I walked on the edge. I call it walking on the edge. So.
Oh, I love that. And we all walk on the edge in different ways, don't we? I'm glad you stayed on this side of the edge, and I appreciate you sharing your story. The stories that we share here on the porch are personal and have collective impact. Judy Helm Wright says that the more personal the story, the more universal the impact. And during the pandemic, I don't know if you remember this, but we heard lots of stories about the Spanish flu pandemic. As a matter of fact, I found out that my grandfather was actually at Fort Benning in Kansas when the Spanish flu broke out. I'd never heard that ever in my entire growing up. My parents didn't tell a lot of stories. They were Depression era babies, and they put their nose down and they got stuff done. So I didn't hear a lot of those stories, but I started looking back through the files thinking, I think my grandfather was in the Army around that time, and he was from Kansas. And I had a picture of his platoon. That's what they're called in the Army, a platoon. In the Air Force, they're called a squadron. I'm more familiar with that, but of his platoon. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the Spanish flu. And he was in the middle of it. He survived it. And I never knew. So with that concept, let's imagine now, obviously I'm his grandchild, not his great-great-grandchild, but let's imagine 100 years down the road, there's another pandemic. What would you want your great-great-grandchildren to know about the COVID pandemic of 2020?
Well, I personally think it has been a reset for the world. It certainly has given us an incredible opportunity to slow down and shut down for a while and reassess. And I know that's what I did. I reassessed a lot in my own life, and it certainly has given us a chance to do that. And I agree with you for the pandemics in the past. I mean, they survived it. A lot of people were lost. I consider ourselves so lucky that we had technology to keep us connected. Imagine back then, you wouldn't have known for months or maybe even years that you had lost people in that pandemic. And now we can see each other and we can still talk to each other, and they didn't have that luxury. And who knows, in 100 years from now, what the technology will be able to achieve. But it's all about just supporting each other, loving each other. I got to live with my adult sons that I would have never had that chance ever. They would have gone off. My son graduated from college right in the middle of all of that, and he had plans to go live somewhere else, but instead he was home taking care of me and is still with me. And it's changed the perspective in so many ways. And I'm sure in 100 years from now, those opportunities would would be the same for those people. And I'm sure they were 100 years ago as well.
I love that, Vivian. And I know one of the things I had a college student graduate during that time frame too. He didn't get to have a graduation or anything. He just came home. And my adult daughter came home from college because, well, she was actually in Ecuador and couldn't get home. And it was very, very chaotic. But what I have experienced as I watch this happen is what you said about love is so many people. If you have not gone through these experiences, if you have not heard the stories of our grandparents, it's easy to lose hope and think, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end, because we've never seen, or perhaps some people have never seen, what happens on the other side. So the fact that you bring the concept of love to this, and that it's all about love, is exactly what the Storyteller's Porch is about sharing our stories so that others can hear our experiences, the real stories from real people with real love. During the summer of 2020 and through COVID, I held on to the concept that love always wins. Vivian, thank you for sharing that concept with us again today.
You are so welcome, and thank you again so much for having me.
I'm glad you were here. And here at the Storyteller's Porch, we believe we are the stories we share. Keep living your story and meet us next time here on the porch. And don't forget to bring your favorite drink.
To learn more about our storytellers and our host, Jill Davis, you can find their bios and their social media links at thestorytellersporch.com. To make sure you hear every story with us on the porch, follow us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Stitcher, and wherever you hear your favorite shows. We'll see you next time here on the porch, where I'll be drinking some iced coffee and cream. What drink will you bring?